Third episode begins as two guys fishing out on the ice heard something outside their little cabin thing. They find that kid whose dad sent him into the snow, hoping someone might find him, half frozen and barely breathing. To Frank's relief, the box contains a sign that Havlock is playing nice. It's got Sarah's car keys in it. They can't possibly start a manhunt in the dark wilderness of Alaska. But Havlock clearly wants them to find Sarah's car, and he's left it at an easy enough spot for the marshals to locate. There's nothing in the car, but the car's navigation history gets them Sarah's location in no time. This is only happening because Havlock wanted Frank to get Sarah back. It's his way to earn Frank's trust before he gets to what he wants. Up at the cabin, the officer Hayes shows up to check on Luke and Kira. They're not there, though, but he does wind up in trouble. The inmate sneaks up behind Hayes and knocks him out cold. The scuffle awakens Luke and Kira, who happens to be upstairs asleep. When Luke finds the guy downstairs, they actually talk plainly, and Luke reveals that his dad is a marshal. Kira is a bit smarter and finds Hayes' car outside, and, subsequently, the files confirming that the guy in their cabin is one of the inmates. When Kira tells Luke about what she's found, they try to devise a plan to escape. Unfortunately, it doesn't work, and they're held at gunpoint and forced to concede. After Frank finds Sarah's abandoned car, Frank is pissed and calls on some extra forces, namely in the form of Hutch and his buddies. They don't find Havlock, but do manage to track down a few other inmates. Frank catches up to the young kid, Caleb, after he's brought back to camp. He's from New York originally and only 8. He learns about the inmates that have taken his father and realizes how serious this situation is. Hearing the kid's testimony hits hard, and Caleb also recognizes the inmates on the wall as the ones who have taken his dad. He mentions a river, too, which gives some clue over where they need to look. Interestingly, Havlock is not too far away and runs into those same inmates. He claims to be out camping and nobody recognizes him as the inmate on board the plane. The inmates take him with them, unaware of the threat he poses. Unfortunately, the inmates find a transport just out in the wild, run by a company called Alyeska Arctic Adventures. It seems they're in the general area scouting local wildlife like a frozen safari. They were actually in the midst of a 6-day tour of the Arctic Circle, too. This transport is called the Tundra Buggy. Apparently, they didn't get the memo about the inmates, and it doesn't take long for the men to head over and hold them all up at gunpoint. Outside, Frank continues to keep Sydney at arm's length. However, she bites back and reveals how she's also being taken for a ride here. She's not being told the full story about the prison transport and wants answers just like he does. Word of the hostage situation reaches our guys, who assess the situation. Now, the inmates are a rabble of nasty individuals, ranging from the big guy, Argento Volpe, to his assistant, Edward Porter, and another dangerous guy called Spencer Todd Covington. The boy's father is also with them, Sam Barker. Now, in the middle of all this, Frank manages to find Sarah and get her back. Sydney shows up and wants to talk to her, but Frank immediately shuffles her out the room. Now that she's back, Frank is at least a bit more at ease, but there's still the Luke situation that they need to try and resolve. Spencer Covington is the one leading the inmate charge, and it doesn't take long for him to turn his attention to Havlock. The guy is just nonchalantly on his laptop, but radio chatter and increased activity nearby makes him realize Havlock is special. Well, he shows his skills by immediately taking down all 4 men and taking control of the rig. Sarah speaks to Sydney next and goes over what she remembers from being captured. She knows Havlock was printing numbers, but his purpose appears to be with Frank. He seems to have identified a weakness that he can exploit. Sydney believes Havlock wants to control Frank and manipulate him. Well, he soon communicates through and speaks to Frank, telling him he's a man of his word. With Sarah back, there's something else Havlock wants: Sydney's Xenogate passcode. This code happens to be holding the identities and locations of every asset she's developed in the field. Eventually, she concedes, but that's the least of their problems. Luke and Kira radio through to say they're fine. They're not. And then the radio is destroyed, leaving their fate unknown for the time being. Sydney does reveal here that the file mentioned earlier, was actually her father's doing. He created this clandestine program in the wake of 9/11, but now the program he gave his life for is being weaponized against her. While Sydney is trying to do what she can for her father's legacy, Frank opens up and admits that he lost his daughter 2 weeks before her ninth birthday. Frank blames himself for her loss, and there's not a day that goes by that this job doesn't tear him apart with guilt because of this. For now, we don't know the full story here. The helicopter shows up in the frozen tundra, just as Havlock messages someone, telling them he'll contact at the Bluebird tomorrow. Frank touches down and shows up to see Havlock and the others. He wants to bargain with him and shows up. He manages to save Sam, but Havlock bites back, explaining that he knows about his secret. While they talk, Sydney shows and manages to attach a chain to the front of the transport, which lifts them right off the ground and into the air. The inmates fall out one by one and are picked up by the authorities. The plan works a treat, and they manage to surround Havlock. Only he decides to drive off the cliff face, still attached to the helicopter. A scuffle ensues between him and Frank as they race toward the cliff edge and find themselves hanging for dear life. It's touch and go until Havlock reenacts the scene from The Lost World and has to navigate the glass. Eventually, Sydney catches up, but she hesitates to shoot him. Instead, he kicks the glass in and escapes. The reason, as we soon realize, is because she and Havlock were romantically involved in the past, and he manipulated her to get what he wanted. Frank soon learns this, and he asks Sydney for help. Sydney warns that this is going to get difficult, and Havlock is going to poison his family against him. When Frank gets home, the first thing he checks is a hidden spot in the basement. Havlock wasn't kidding. He's moved whatever secret Frank is hiding from the world. But he did mention that he tucked it away safely in Alaska. Frank's quick with codes, so he opens Walter Coates' book and finds his secret stuck inside its hollowed-out chest. It's a gun. At some point, Frank stole a piece of evidence and hid it in his basement. The fact that he joins Sydney at the bar and proposes that they team up and go after Havlock means that he's gotten under Frank's skin. Frank really doesn't like that Havlock knows something personal about him. When Sydney asks if his scars have something to do with his daughter's death, he doesn't even answer her question. As for Sydney, the fight is way more complicated for her than we have assumed so far. Sydney drops the biggest bomb yet when Frank asks her why she might still care about Havlock. She claims to be his first victim. Sydney is married to Havlock, or Levi, if you want to call him by his non-CIA name.